How do you truly know if the person standing in front of you is the one God intended for your life? It's a question that lingers in the hearts of so many. People often search for loud signals, dramatic gestures, or lightning bolts from the sky. But the truth is, God rarely speaks in noise. His confirmations often arrive in silence, in whispers, in the kind of gentle ways that can be easily overlooked if you're only looking for the spectacular. Love, as the world defines it, is usually about intensity, fireworks, passion, chaos, and drama. It's painted as a rush that sweeps you off your feet, something that shakes your world in a way that feels uncontrollable. And while those moments can be exciting, they are rarely sustainable. They burn bright but fast, leaving people empty and confused once the fire dies down. But when God is the author of the love in your life, it doesn't come to disrupt your peace. It comes to anchor it. It doesn't come as a storm. It comes as still waters, flowing steadily, quietly, and deeply. This is why so many miss it. We are conditioned to chase what is loud and obvious. We are drawn to drama because it feels alive. But the most life-changing things in your story will rarely arrive with chaos. They will slip in quietly, reshaping your heart without demanding attention. That is how God works gently, intentionally, and always with purpose. His way of confirming the right person is not about overwhelming your senses. It's about settling your spirit, and this is where the beauty lies. Because when you learn to notice the gentle ways God confirms, you no longer have to live in fear of choosing wrong. You don't have to depend on endless second guessing, on overthinking every little sign, or on questioning if this person is truly meant for you. Instead, you learn to trust the quiet nudges, the inner peace, the unspoken certainty that comes when something is aligned with God's will. Think about it. The same God who created the stars doesn't need to send lightning to prove himself. He speaks in the sunrise. He speaks in the wind brushing across your face. He speaks in the quiet moments when your soul feels safe. And if that is how he speaks in creation, why would his confirmation of love be any different? He doesn't need to dazzle you with extremes. He confirms through peace, through growth, through alignment, through the very things your soul has been craving without even knowing it. But here's the challenge. If you aren't paying attention, you can miss it. You can walk right past the very person God has chosen because they didn't arrive the way you expected. You thought it would feel like a rush, but instead it feels like a calm. You thought it would make you nervous, but instead it gives you rest. You thought it would be impossible to miss, but in reality, it's only visible to a heart that is still enough to listen. So why does this matter for you right now? Because learning to see these gentle confirmations can save you from years of unnecessary heartbreak. It can protect you from chasing the wrong relationships, from wasting energy on what only looks good on the surface but crumbles under pressure. More importantly, it allows you to step into what God has actually prepared for you with clarity, confidence, and peace. When you recognize God's confirmations, you gain freedom. Freedom from doubt, from confusion, from the exhausting cycle of guessing whether someone is the one. You begin to see that his signs aren't random, they are deeply intentional. And when you recognize them, you unlock the ability to embrace love with open arms, without fear of what might happen tomorrow. You understand that if God has authored this story, then he will also sustain it. And that is the reward waiting for you. That is why this matters. Because when you learn these confirmations, you won't just identify the person meant for you, you will also learn how to trust God's hand in every detail of your life. You will no longer chase after love in desperation, because you'll know it doesn't have to be forced. You will no longer wonder if you're worthy of a healthy relationship, because you'll realize God designed one specifically for you, So listen closely. Don't rush past the whispers because you're waiting for the thunder. Don't dismiss the calm because you were expecting fireworks. God's confirmation of your forever person is not about drama, it's about destiny. And destiny rarely shouts. It speaks softly, but once you hear it, you can never unhear it. That quiet assurance becomes the foundation of everything that follows. The truth is, love from God doesn't demand you chase it. It finds you when you are ready. It meets you where you are, not to overwhelm you, but to lift you higher. It teaches you that forever doesn't begin with noise, it begins with peace. And when you can recognize the gentle signs of His confirmation, you hold in your hands something unshakable. You hold a love that is not just for a moment, but for a lifetime. One of the clearest ways God confirms that you've met your forever person is through the presence of deep, unshakable peace. Not the kind of peace that comes and goes with circumstances, but the kind that remains steady even when life is uncertain. It is a peace that settles in your spirit, telling you without words that you are safe, that you are understood, and that you no longer need to carry the weight of fear or doubt. This peace cannot be manufactured, and it cannot be faked. It is divine, and when you feel it, you know it. Think about how often people confuse love with intensity. They mistake chaos for passion and anxiety for excitement. They believe the butterflies in their stomach are proof of something real, when in truth those feelings are often signs of insecurity, of trying to impress, of fearing rejection. That kind of love keeps you on edge, always questioning, always second, guessing if you're enough or if they'll stay. But God's love doesn't do that. When He brings the right person into your life, they don't stir up fear, they dissolve it. They don't push you into confusion, they bring clarity. You stop wondering if they'll walk away because something inside of you knows they're not here by accident. This kind of peace is powerful because it speaks directly to one of the deepest needs of the human soul, the need for safety. Psychological studies show that true connection is built on emotional safety, the feeling that you can be fully yourself without fear of judgment or abandonment. And when you find a person who gives you that without demanding you change who you are, it is more than human compatibility. It is divine confirmation. It is God whispering to you, "Here you are home." That peace shows up in the quiet moments. When you're sitting together without needing to fill the silence, and it doesn't feel empty, it feels full. When disagreements don't spiral into destruction, but instead become opportunities for understanding and growth. When you look at them and realize you don't have to perform, don't have to wear a mask, don't have to pretend. You can simply breathe and be, and that is enough. That is the presence of God's hand on a relationship. Many people miss this because they've been conditioned to equate drama with depth. They think if there are no fights, no constant highs and lows, it must not be real. But drama is not love. Drama is insecurity. Peace is love. Peace is what God gives to confirm what is His. And when you've experienced enough of what isn't from Him, you begin to understand just how priceless that peace is. It doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It simply exists, steady and unwavering, because it comes from a higher source. If you've ever walked away from a relationship that left you anxious, drained, or questioning your worth, then you know the difference peace makes. It feels like stepping out of a storm and into the warmth of sunlight. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. It feels like coming home after being lost. That is the gift of God's confirmation. And once you experience it, you realize you don't have to settle for anything less. Peace is also a protector. It keeps you from confusing temporary attraction with eternal purpose. It reminds you that the right person doesn't complicate your soul, they calm it. They don't demand constant reassurance because their presence already reassures you. They don't make you doubt who you are. They remind you of who God made you to be. Peace doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean there will never be challenges. But it does mean you will face those challenges together without fear that the foundation will collapse. And here is the truth many overlook. God's confirmation will never come with constant chaos. He is not a God of confusion. He is a God of order, a God of peace. If someone brings endless confusion into your life, no matter how strong the attraction feels, that is not divine confirmation. Love that is from God builds, it doesn't break. It steadies, it doesn't shake. It gives you courage, it doesn't take it away. So when you find yourself with someone who makes your heart rest, who silences the noise of insecurity, who brings peace even when life around you is uncertain, pause and pay attention. That is not ordinary. That is extraordinary. That is God answering the question you've been asking in the quiet of your prayers. And the reward of this kind of peace is more than just comfort, it is strength. Because when you know you are loved without conditions, when you know someone is standing with you without hidden agendas, you are free to grow, to dream, to step into your purpose without fear of falling. That peace doesn't just confirm a person, it empowers your life. It becomes the foundation on which everything else can be built. Never overlook it, never underestimate it, because peace is not weakness. Peace is proof that what you've found isn't just good, it's God. And when God gives peace, He is giving you the greatest confirmation of all. Peace creates the soil, but growth is the fruit. When God sends the right person, they don't just make you feel safe. They make you want to rise higher. You begin to notice something powerful happening within yourself. You are becoming a better version of who you already are. Not because they push you with pressure, but because their presence inspires you with possibility. You don't feel forced to change. You feel invited to grow. That difference is everything. Human beings naturally expand when they feel secure. Psychology calls it the broaden and build effect. When we feel safe and loved, our mind opens, our creativity flourishes, our resilience strengthens. In unhealthy relationships, fear and anxiety narrow us down. We shrink, we play small, we hold back dreams because we are too busy surviving. But with the one God has chosen, the opposite happens. You take risks you once avoided. You pursue goals you once doubted. You step into challenges with courage, because their love fuels your faith instead of draining it. Growth that is God-inspired never feels like losing yourself. It feels like finally meeting yourself. It doesn't erase who you are. It reveals more of who you were created to be. You don't feel like you're bending under pressure. You feel like you're unfolding into purpose. And the beauty is, it happens gently. Not overnight, not through control, but through a steady influence that shapes you without you even realizing it. One day you look back and see how far you've come, and you know it's because love like this makes you brave. The wrong person will make growth feel like a demand. They will constantly point out what you are not, making you chase an approval that always feels just out of reach. With them, growth feels heavy, like carrying a burden you never chose. But the right person does the opposite. They affirm your worth as you are, and in doing so, they create the space for you to become even more. They remind you of your strengths, they encourage your dreams, they celebrate your victories, and they stand beside you when you stumble. That is not just compatibility, that is divine partnership. God's confirmation shows itself in the way your soul responds. You start believing again. You start dreaming again. You start walking into rooms with confidence because you know you are not walking alone. You no longer measure yourself against who you used to be, but against the limitless potential God has placed inside you. That is growth that feels natural. It doesn't fight against who you are. It flows with who you are becoming. Think about the greatest leaders, creators, and visionaries in history. Many of them found their strength not just within themselves, but through the love and support of someone who believed in them. That is because love has a multiplying effect. It magnifies courage, it amplifies faith, it gives people the boldness to step into places they would have once avoided. When the right person enters your life, their love becomes a mirror, reflecting back to you the greatness you didn't always see. And when you start to see it, you can't help but rise. This kind of growth is also humbling, because it shows you how much better life becomes when love is aligned with God's timing. You realize that real love isn't about holding you back, it's about setting you free. It doesn't compete with your calling, it complements it. It doesn't dim your light, it brightens it. And the more you walk in that light, the more you realize this growth isn't just for you, it's for the world. Because when God brings two people together, it's not just about personal happiness, it's about purpose. The growth you experience in a God-ordained relationship spills over into every area of life. You start speaking differently. You think differently. You carry yourself differently. You stop entertaining the things that once drained you, because now you know your value. You make wiser choices, not out of fear of losing love, but out of the strength of having it. And others around you notice. They see a new confidence, a new focus, a new glow. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. True growth is not always easy, but it feels right. It stretches you in ways that bring fulfillment, not exhaustion. It challenges you to rise, but never in a way that breaks you down. Instead of hearing you're not enough, you hear you are more than capable. Instead of feeling controlled, you feel supported, and support is what allows the human spirit to soar. If you've ever been in a relationship that made you feel smaller, that dimmed your joy, that silenced your voice, then you know the difference immediately when you encounter one that makes you grow. It's like stepping out of a shadow and into the light. You realize growth doesn't have to hurt. It can heal. It can uplift. It can bring out the fullness of who you are meant to be. That is God's way. He doesn't send someone to tear you down. He sends someone to build you up. He doesn't send someone to limit you. He sends someone to unlock you. And when you feel yourself growing in ways that align with your true purpose, when you sense your spirit expanding with peace and courage, you can be sure that love is not just good, it is divine. There is something undeniable about alignment. It's the moment when pieces fall into place in ways you could never have arranged on your own. When God sends the person meant for you, your paths connect with such precision that it almost feels unreal. You find yourself looking back at the events, the timing, the small decisions, and you realize it was all being woven together long before you even knew it. That is not random chance. That is divine order. We live in a world that constantly tells us love is about effort, chasing, and forcing things to work. But when God is the author, love flows with a rhythm that feels both natural and extraordinary. You don't have to beg for it. You don't have to manipulate it. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to make it happen. It unfolds with a grace that can't be explained by logic alone. It shows up in synchronicities, in meaningful encounters, in doors opening at the right time. That is God's fingerprint. The human mind craves patterns. Psychology shows us that we are wired to look for meaning in the chaos, to find connections where others might see none. But divine alignment goes beyond our perception. It's when events connect in ways so perfect they surpass coincidence. It's when someone enters your life at the exact moment you needed them most, not a second too soon or too late. And in your heart, you know it's more than timing, it's destiny. This alignment does not mean life suddenly becomes free of obstacles. What it means is that even in challenges, the connection feels guided. There's a sense that you are on the same path for a reason greater than yourselves. You may face storms, but the bond remains anchored. You may walk through trials, but something deep inside whispers that the story is bigger than the struggle. That whisper is God's confirmation. Think about it. How many times in your life have you tried to force something that wasn't meant for you? How many doors did you push on, only to find them closed no matter how hard you tried? And then, in contrast, how many times did the right opportunity, the right relationship, appear almost effortlessly when you weren't even looking? That is how divine alignment works. It's not about striving endlessly. It's about stepping into what has already been prepared for you. When God aligns you with the right person, even the imperfections make sense. The differences don't feel like barriers. They feel like balance. The connection doesn't erase your individuality. It harmonizes it. You realize that what once felt missing is now complete, not because they filled your emptiness, but because they walk with you in wholeness. That kind of unity cannot be manufactured, it is orchestrated. Alignment also reveals itself in shared vision. Suddenly, the goals you carry in your heart echo in theirs. The values you hold close are mirrored in the way they live. It's not about being identical, it's about being complementary. You find yourselves moving in the same direction, with the same heartbeat for purpose. That is not luck. That is confirmation that God has intertwined your callings for something greater. There is a deep peace that comes with this kind of alignment. Not the fleeting peace of temporary happiness, but the enduring peace of knowing you are walking in God's plan. It silences doubt. It quiets fear. It replaces confusion with clarity. And it gives you the courage to step boldly into the future, because you are not stepping into it alone. You are stepping into it with someone God Himself positioned beside you. The beauty of divine alignment is that it makes sense of the waiting. Every disappointment, every delay, every heartbreak begins to look different when you see how perfectly things connect in the end. You realize those closed doors were not rejection, they were redirection. They were guiding you to the person who would not just fit into your life, but align with the very destiny God designed for you. That realization transforms pain into purpose and longing into gratitude. But alignment also requires trust, because sometimes it doesn't look like what you expected. Sometimes the packaging is different from the picture you painted in your mind. Yet, if you look deeper, if you listen to the quiet conviction within, you will sense the hand of God. And when you sense it, the wisest thing you can do is trust it. Trust the timing, trust the connection, trust the alignment that could only be written by the author of your story. When you experience this kind of divine connection, you begin to understand why nothing else worked out before. You stop questioning the past because now you see the reason, and instead of chasing, you start receiving. Instead of worrying, you start believing. Instead of striving for love, you start walking in it. That is the shift alignment brings, and in that realization comes freedom. Freedom to let go of fear, freedom to embrace joy, freedom to step forward with confidence, knowing that when God aligns something, no force on earth can break it apart. Alignment is not fragile, it is unshakable, because it was never built on human effort. It was built on divine design. This is the kind of confirmation that doesn't just change how you love, it changes how you live. Because when you know your relationship is aligned with heaven's plan, every step becomes infused with purpose. You wake up with gratitude, you move with intention, you love with courage, and you carry the unshakable confidence that you are exactly where you are meant to be, with exactly who you are meant to be with. When God confirms something in your life, He does not leave room for endless confusion. His confirmations may be gentle, but they are clear. They bring peace to your heart, clarity to your mind, and strength to your spirit. Yet so often, people miss these confirmations because fear drowns them out. Fear of being wrong, fear of losing what feels right, fear of stepping into something that demands vulnerability. But here is the truth: fear is not from God. Fear clouds vision, while faith sharpens it. When God sends His confirmation, your role is not to question endlessly, but to trust fully. Trusting does not mean you will understand every detail. It means you surrender the need to control outcomes and choose to rest in what God has already spoken. This is where so many people struggle. They want certainty without faith, guarantees without surrender, but divine confirmation does not work that way. It requires courage to lean into the peace you feel, even when your mind can't explain it. It requires humility to let go of your plan and embrace God's. It requires faith to believe that His ways, though higher, are always good. Psychology tells us that human beings naturally resist uncertainty. We crave predictability because it gives us a sense of safety. But faith invites us into a different kind of safety, the kind that does not come from knowing the whole path, but from knowing who walks it with us. When you recognize the gentle ways God confirms someone is meant for you, you are being invited into that safety. You are being asked to trade your anxiety for trust, your overthinking for peace, your fear for faith. And that trade is the very key to experiencing the fullness of what God has prepared. The truth is, many blessings are lost not because they weren't given, but because they weren't trusted. People sabotage what God is doing by doubting it, by comparing it, by clinging to their past wounds. They push away the very answer to their prayers because it doesn't arrive in the package they expected. But if you are listening to God's voice, if you are paying attention to His quiet signs, you already know the difference. You already sense the peace that surpasses understanding. You already feel the growth that feels effortless. You already see the alignment that cannot be explained by chance. The only thing left is to trust it. Trust does not mean everything will be perfect. It means you believe God is present in the imperfections. It means you choose to walk forward even when fear whispers lies. It means you stop waiting for a lightning bolt and instead honor the gentle whisper already confirming what your spirit knows. That is where strength is born. That is where confidence grows. That is where love deepens. When you trust God's confirmation, you begin to live differently. You no longer settle for relationships that drain you because you know what peace feels like now. You no longer chase what isn't meant for you because you've tasted alignment. You no longer mistake chaos for passion because you've experienced God's order. And with that awareness comes freedom, the freedom to love boldly, to walk confidently, and to stop apologizing for choosing what truly feels sent by God. Every great relationship built on God's foundation requires trust. Trust in Him, trust in the process, and trust in the person He has placed by your side. And this trust transforms love from something fragile into something unbreakable. It turns connection into covenant. It shifts the focus from temporary happiness to eternal purpose. Because when God writes the story, love is not just about companionship, it becomes about destiny. The reward for trusting God's confirmation is not just finding the right person. It is becoming the right person. It is stepping into maturity, learning to love with patience, and choosing faith over fear again and again. It is allowing God to refine you so that when His chosen one stands beside you, you are not half a person searching for completion, you are whole, and together you build something greater than either of you could have built alone. Do not underestimate the power of this. The person God sends into your life is not just there to make you feel loved. They are there to help you live loved. They are there to help you grow, to hold you accountable, to remind you of your worth when you forget it. They are there to reflect God's heart toward you in ways you might never have believed otherwise. That is not ordinary love, that is sacred, that is divine, that is worth trusting. So the question is not whether God is confirming. The question is whether you are willing to believe Him, whether you are willing to silence the voices of fear, of doubt, of insecurity, and anchor yourself in the peace He gives. Whether you will stop asking for louder signs and instead honor the ones He has already given. Because the truth is, God is not trying to confuse you. He is trying to guide you. And when He guides, He does not lead you into destruction, He leads you into destiny. Your forever person is not a random accident. They are a divine appointment, and if God has already confirmed them in your life, your role is to embrace it with courage, to walk forward with faith, to build with intention, to love with strength, and to remember that what God ordains cannot be undone. His confirmation is not fragile, His promises are not uncertain, His plan is not temporary. When God confirms, He establishes, and what He establishes will stand, no matter what storms may come.